Hello everybody, this is Ryan over at High Carb Regenerator. Today I wanted to talk, I wasn't even going to do a video, but it's very slow on the DoorDash today, and so here we are. I wanted to talk about something that I've been going through, and I think a lot of people go through, and there's different variations of it, and it is eating disorders. Now, eating disorder can be any spectrum. It could be anorexic, it could be obese, it could be land whale, it could be bulimic, it could be any kind of self-image. And I think self-image is what I go through the most. Is, I've always been the big guy, so I kind of just keep myself there, because if I was a skinny guy, like, what would I be? I mean, you have this, or you don't feel attractive to the opposite sex, so you're like, well, I'm fat, they wouldn't want me anyway, or something along those lines. But lately, it's been stemming from the idea of having to be a perfect raw vegan. And it has really limited me. I'm extremely tired today, and I'm not normally tired. Because yesterday I was out and I'm like, oh, I can't get that rice. I gotta have bananas or whatever. And I don't have bananas right now. They're not ripe. So I basically starve myself or drink sugar water all day because I got to be raw, and then I come home and eat a salad. I'm not going to bring my big, huge old bowl out on the road and, fork down the salad, because it's going to go terrible. The other day, it's a little bit nicer today. It's like 93 and only 70% humidity. But the other day, it was 104 and 90% humidity. Things don't make it too well out in that temperature. You know what I mean? You can't even breathe. And I went for a bike ride and I couldn't breathe. I was going to do hill rides or, hills that day. I purposely picked an area that has really steep hills, but I went through the hills because there's this bike trail, rails to trails or whatever. It used to be a railroad track. And it goes through the hills and it's flat almost. But I was going to get off the rails to trails and ride the hills because they're really like crazy hills over there. But I couldn't even breathe. So I only did 16, 17 miles and I called it a day. I'm like, forget this. And then yesterday I did 20 miles and I'm like, I can't even so this has got to stop. If you are on this track, if you are trying to be perfect for your diet doesn't care about you, right? Your diet doesn't care. The diet is diet. You got to be the person who in charge of this. And I have noticed that the more variety that I have, the more debilitated I get. It sounds absolutely stupid. Leave down in the comments down below if you go through that. And also, he wants you to subscribe. So do I. But yeah, the more variety I have, the more I'm like, oh man, I don't know what to make now. And it's ridiculous. It goes crazy. So I try to not have that much variety around, and then I actually eat. It's miraculous. It's like, oh, he eats. He's eating. I go through this all the time. I've told you guys over the however long I've been doing this, I don't like variety. Variety is not great for me. I start, it just, anyway, I keep mentioning this. So that's where the rice diet is so simple. You just eat rice or, bananas or whatever. And there's no thought process behind this. When there's too much thought process, maybe that holds you up too. But there's just so many variations of this. And I think we get stuck in this and we don't realize that we're getting stuck in it. So it's one thing, you really have to start admitting this to yourself. Like, you might be stuck, if you're on, if nothing's going on, if you're always tired, if you're always whatever, or if you're, looking in the weird, or like the worst is taking out the scale every 5 minutes. If you're doing this kind of stuff, throw the scale out, give the scale away. If you have to, don't look in the mirror, don't look in the camera, whatever. And just let the body heal, because if the body never heals, you're never going to get where you want to go. And if you never get where you want to go, then you've been on a diet for 22 years like I have. And it's not great. So if you don't want to be on a 22-year diet plan, just don't do this stuff. Don't weigh yourself every day. Don't even weigh yourself weekly. Like I've said in the past, I don't have any string here. But take a piece of string, and if you need to get measurements, just like measure your waist with this piece of string so you have no number attached to it. And then just put a little knot where, as it goes down or something like that. But the more of this that you get into, the more debilitating it is. And then you start starving yourself. And I haven't intentionally been doing it. I've just been out. Like yesterday, I was out for 10 hours. Not just all DoorDash. I mean, I'd go bike ride. I go do all of this stuff. I'm not a huge fan of being in the house. That's why I want to move to a warmer climate so I can be outside like year round. I'm not a fan of like winter sports. It's just not my thing. So, but if you've got this going on, like I go through bouts of this when I'm not going through it, and when most people aren't going through it, everything starts going the way it's supposed to. The weight starts coming off, and everything's ebbing and flowing, and then all of a sudden it hits again. It hits. Let me know down below if you go through this. I mean, some of you don't, some of you do. It depends on your personality. I tend to be a very lax, not planning any kind of thing, anything ever type of personality, so that can backfire on you. So people who are type A, they might have all their meals made and everything. I don't meal prep. I hate it, and I don't like to waste things. I haven't used a microwave. I used a microwave once in the last 3 months, and it was terrible. So I don't like doing it. I don't like planning. So if I don't like planning, this is where the rice cooker comes in handy, or this is where bananas come in handy, or this is watermelon come in handy. But you've got to know what you're going to eat. If you're going to question yourself, or if you're going to say, I can't eat that much because then I'll be fat. And I'm like, you're already fat. Oh yeah, well, this is, I mean, you gotta ask yourself these questions. Look like that crazy person, like I do most of the time, talking to myself. It might help you. You're like, dude, is it going to make it any worse? Probably not. Because if you're starving, I went through this in 2016. I've gone through this, and everybody's like, well, why should we listen to you? Because you've done this before. And listen to me and don't go through this. I started off in 2016 trying to starve myself riding a ton of miles. And the chiropractor's like, bro, you are not eating enough. And I'm like, oh, but I'm eating my 2,000. He's like, well, it ain't enough for you. And once I just started adding more and more and more and more food, and even I got to the point where I actually had to start adding in Cliff Bars 2 or 3 times a day, because getting in that amount of calories is very hard to do. I was going through about 4 pounds of sugar a week. I was going through like a box or 2 of Cliff Bars, and I know it's got a lot of fat in it, but it's also got a lot of sugar. And I was going through apples, oranges, bananas. I don't really like apples all that much. There's Macintosh I like, but they're hard to find really good ones. There's these red flesh ones. I forget what they're called. They're Mountain Lady or something like that, which are extremely hard to find, and I like those. So when I find them, I buy them and I eat them. But other than that, apples are like, they're good for juicing, but that's about it. But really keep this stuff in mind. I'm having cognizant of this. Somebody actually DM'd me on, or is it DM on Instagram? I don't know, whatever it is on Instagram. And it made me start thinking about this stuff again. I can't believe I keep going through this, even since I started this channel. But it is what it is. This is the journey. Hopefully it doesn't take you this long on the journey. I really got to start a group, because I think that group mentality can be dangerous and good at the same time. Depends on what it is. And that's it. Anyway, watch these patterns. Maybe even write them down. I've always got notebooks around me. Write these patterns down. Make sure you don't keep going through this. Make sure you don't keep going through this, because if you do, you're never going to get where you want to go. And maybe mentally you don't actually want to get there. And that is something you're going to have to work on as well. Peace. Comment, questions down below. Like, subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time.